What are the commonalities among leaders who sustain excellence over? Bill, it's been years in the making. It's so great to have you here on the Learning Leader Show. Welcome.
You have a great show, Ryan. It's a privilege to be here.
Thank you. Means a lot. I'm curious, over the course of your career, you've surrounded yourself with some of the most impactful and effective leaders in the world. What have you found to be some of the common qualities, behaviors, mindsets of the world's most effective leaders, the ones who have sustained excellence over an extended period of time?
Well, if we can talk about leaders, business, nonprofits, medical, stay away from politicians who run for office. The most effective leaders are ones that are real, that know how to bring people together around a sense of purpose and values and inspire them to reach their full potential. They see in each person the capacity to do more, to do better, and they reach out, they challenge them, they inspire them, they coach them, they help them reach to a greater height. But they come together as a team, like any good sports team, Ryan. They come together as a team, and any good coach, because they have to play for the team first, not for the individuals. So the ones that are out for themselves are not going to make it today. You know, the toxic leaders that are only out for their own self-interest are not going to make it, because people can see right through that, and they can smell a phony in 60 seconds, and they won't deal with them. So I think today's leaders really have to be authentic. They have to be willing to be vulnerable. They have to be willing to make mistakes. They have to say, hey, I need your help. You know, I don't know about this. Would you help me? And most people will say yes.
So vulnerability and authenticity are buzzwords now, but they weren't when you started talking about them 20 plus years ago.
Yeah.
What was it that you saw 2+ decades ago about vulnerability and authenticity that now it seems like most are catching up?
Well, actually, to tell you the truth, Ryan, it took me a while to become vulnerable, because I felt like I had to have the answers. I go with a group of security analysts at Medtronic, and before that at Honeywell. Everyone expects you to go to the board of directors. They expect you to have answers. And I had to learn to be vulnerable, to say, I made a mistake. I don't know. I don't have the answer. We'll get it for you. And that was a learned skill. But what I saw back in the 90s, in the era of Jack Welch and all, was all about the great man theory of leadership and command and control, power and control over people. That's not what people want today. They're not even going to tolerate. Who wants to work for somebody that takes all the credit for their work and just tells them what to do? They want to feel their own, find their own leadership, find their own path, and be empowered to show what they can do. And so great leaders figure out who are those people and challenge them to step up. So that's why I wrote my very first book called Authentic Leadership back when there was no such thing in 2003, because I thought, why not have real leaders? Isn't that what you really want? And I always say to people, Ryan, think about the best leader you ever worked for. Now, isn't that the kind of leader you want to be with people?
Mm-hmm. What do you think of Jack Welch?
I think he was a great leader for the 80s and 90s. I think his model, his style would not work today, as we've seen with many of his proteges have gone off to run other companies like Boeing and Home Depot and Chrysler, and led to a lot of problems. Because today's, the millennial generation, the Gen Xers, and now the Gen Zs coming along, they have agency today. They feel like they have power, and they only want to work someplace where somebody cares about them and where there's a greater mission. And the idea that the mission of the company that GE had, 2 words, making money, doesn't work in today's world. That's not what it's. I couldn't go to people at Medtronic and say, Ryan, your job is to help us make $3.91 a share. No, your job is to help doctors get our products implanted in their patients. Your job is to design really creative products in the lab that help meet people's needs, or on the production line. It's got to be a perfect quality. You make 1,000 heart valves a year, one of them fails, somebody's going to die. Not acceptable. So that's your job. You can relate to that. There's a human life at the end.
you mentioned Medtronic. You were the CEO of Medtronic, and we were talking before recorded that I love the fact that you've been a pure operator and crushed it in that life. Then you retire from that life and you become more of a teacher and an educator, literally a teacher at Harvard and a teacher through the course of your books. And you crushed it in that life too, which is awesome. That's why I wanted to talk to you so much. But I want to start with the first part, your career, because you've done what a lot of people aspire to do. You start at the lower levels of a big company and you eventually become the CEO. Now, this is probably a whole book in itself, this one question, but I'm curious if you had to distill down to the essence of what it was that enabled you to rise within a big company, what did you do? What was it that you did that enabled you to be in the position to become the CEO of a big company?
Well, it's always hard to evaluate yourself, but I would like to think that I built great organizations of great people. So I got a break. Back when I was 27, Ryan, I worked for Litton Industries, and I'd done a strategic plan for them to get into the consumer microwave oven business. There were no microwave ovens in 1970. It didn't go well at first. So 9 months later, I was shipped out to Minneapolis to help turn the business around. I'm 27 years old. And so I had to hire, remember I hired a vice president of sales and marketing who made twice my salary and was twice my age. I almost got fired by the chairman of Litton Industries saying, you can't pay him that much. You can't pay him $52,000. You know, it didn't matter. I had to find a great engineer. I had to build the team. So I think of myself as a team builder and who can bring people together around a common cause. So we have the experts in all areas. So I've tried to do that in every job I've ever had and develop great organization, growth organization. And that means you got to continue to develop leaders. In Medtronic, we grew 18% per year for 20 years. And even when the company got to be, 10 billion in sales, we were still growing at that rate. And to do that, we had to have great leaders at all levels. So a lot of people look at who's the leader on top. No, I look at who are the frontline leaders, who's working with the people, who's out leading the people, out working with doctors and showing the nuances of how to do that. Or what are the nuances of helping people, young engineers in the lab, to figure out, hey, let's look for a solution to this problem. So I think we need leaders at all levels. Geographically, you need them all over the world. So the great organizations today, to me, their asset is great leaders. I'll give you an example. I was doing a seminar for PepsiCo for all their top HR people. They have 300,000 employees. And I said, you have great brands. Everyone loves your brands. They love the taste of your chips or Frito-Lays and Diet Pepsi, whatever you drink. But your real value walks out the door every day. 300,000 people. They're the ones that make it go. And if I worked for your company in South Korea, I don't know all you people back in New York. I depend upon a good leader in South Korea. And if I don't have a good leader, and the cliches going around, Ryan, people don't leave companies, they leave bad managers. And I've had a couple of mentees working two of the greatest companies in the world I feature in my book, Microsoft and J&J. So this guy calls me up from Microsoft. He's gotten 4 promotions in the last 3 years. He's doing really well. He said, got the worst boss. I'm going to quit. Oracle's offered me or somebody offered me a job. I'm going to quit because, I got a terrible boss. I said, whoa, don't do that. This is a great company. Satya Nadella is argued to be the best business leader in the world today. Microsoft is a transformative company. Just take your time. And I said, there must be somewhere else you can work there. Well, then his ex-boss came and got him and promoted him to a bigger job, and he's happy as a clam. He said, boy. And the other guy's angry. But it was the other guy's problem. Another guy calls me up, J&J, former student of mine, MD, MBA. He's at J&J in research. Great company. And he has the same situation. He has a boss that's just driving him nuts and taking the credit for his work and pushing him down. And I said, look around the company. There may be other opportunities. He calls me up 3 weeks. 3 weeks later, he said, she got fired. And I said, well, J&J is a wise company. Somebody had to figure out this wasn't the right person. So all I'm saying is that we got to stop thinking about one great leader on top. We have to think about great leaders throughout the company. All those examples are companies that do just that. And it's never perfect, but we have to work hard, You want leaders at all levels who carry the spirit and esprit and the purpose of your company.
What about that person who is currently 27? They got their first promotion maybe within the last 6 months, so they become a manager for the first time, and they want to be CEO someday, maybe of the company they're at or another one. What are the practical and specific pieces of advice you would give to that person if that's their goal?
Stop looking at the CEO office, put your head down and do the job and perform really well, and build a team of great people around you and develop them into great leaders too. And they'll propel you up from under. But don't go up and talk to somebody about your next promotion. You can build something right here and they'll give you more. That'll happen in that company. But you got to perform right here. We're looking at how you do. It's like a sports team. Brian, we know you want to be the superstar, but you're 21 years old. You got to perform today. We'll put you on the field. Let's see how you do. Same thing with that 27-year-old leader. But somebody maybe have seen and open your mind up. Maybe somebody saw qualities in you didn't see in yourself. I've had more young leaders tell me this. I didn't think I could handle that job. Corey Berry, the CEO of Best Buy, said, I got jobs I didn't think I could handle, but somebody saw qualities in me that I didn't see in myself. So do you see qualities in other people, 27-year-old? See, my big concern, Ryan, is so the baby boomers, they're all complaining about the young leaders, the people in their 30s. Oh, these young kids, this way they talk, not me. These young kids, they don't get it. They just want to take care of their families, and they want to, they're going to change jobs. I said, look, you don't get it. It's your problem. First of all, don't you want to take care of your family? Ryan Hawk, you have 5 daughters. Don't you want your daughters to have a good life? Do you want to just say you never see your daughters and they graduated from high school, you never knew them? No, you want to have a good life. Doesn't everyone? Second, I think that you've got to give people the opportunity. And the reason people leave at that age, in their 20s and 30s, and the great resignation, they will leave, is you've given them no sense of purpose. If your purpose of your company is like GE is making money, people are not going to resonate with that today. They want to have a higher calling. Hey, how can I make a difference? I'm interested in whatever. I'm interested in climate change. I'm interested in, whatever you're interested in, diversity, you're interested in incoming, whatever it is. You want to create great technological products to make people's lives easier. Great, we'll give you that opportunity. But if there's no bigger calling, like Tim Cook's done a great job at Apple, giving everyone a bigger calling by creating great products that make people's lives easier. Hubert Joly went to Best Buy, did a fantastic job transforming that organization because he said our mission is to fulfill people's needs. Okay, it doesn't have to be healthcare. It can be a computer when there's COVID and I don't have the right computer at home because I'm sitting in my office and doing everything from home and I've got to communicate, or don't have the bandwidth, whatever it is.
You, Bill, this may be weird, but you remind me of George Raveling. Do you know George Raveling?
No, I don't think I do.
George is a great basketball coach. He's the one who was one of the guys that convinced Michael Jordan out of college to sign with Nike. He's an amazing guy. I flew out to Los Angeles to interview him a couple years ago, and in his office he was surrounded by a number of young people. And he has this zest for life, this zest for learning, and it was so contagious. I loved being around him. I didn't want to leave. And I get the same sense with you of this zest and energy and passion and love of life. I'm curious, where does that come from? How are you able to not only maintain this, but it seems like it's growing as you grow. Where does that come from?
When I was 22 years old, I graduated from Georgia Tech. I hadn't met my future wife, Penny, at that time, so it was not a pact. I said, I'm determined to have a great career and a great personal life. And yes, there'll be sacrifice on both sides, but I'm determined to do both. Ryan, I coached youth soccer for 12 years. From the times my sons were 7 and 10 until the younger one got to be 19. And, the last 4 years I had to hire a college coach who could help these kids play D1 soccer in college. But, that was a great experience. I loved it. Now, do I regret doing that? Did I have to leave Honeywell in my old days at 5:30 and say, guys, okay, Ryan, you take charge of the meeting and give me a call at home tonight and tell me how you came out. And people thought it was kind of weird, but I wasn't going to leave a group of 16, 12-year-old boys that are on a soccer field, or I'd make them run laps if they got there late. I couldn't get there late, so I had to go in the car. I know you think this is all crazy, Ryan, but sometimes you do that to have a life, but to me, I wanted to do the thing in my career. I didn't want to live what I could do in a career where I thought I could help other people. And it took me a while to get to Medtronic store step, but I think I could do all those things and try to put it together. So that was my goal.
You've discovered your true north, probably as well as anybody. For those who have not heard that phrase or that term, you literally wrote the book on it. What does it mean to discover and to find your true north?
Your true north is who you are. Ryan, we live in an identity society. They're going to ask you, well, you're a white male, just because I can see you on Zoom, but I wouldn't know it otherwise. Where'd you go to school? Where'd you, and all these things like that. What are you doing now? We shouldn't judge people of the book by its cover. Let's get inside and find out who people are. What do I care, really about? Well, I care about who you are. And we got to make that shift from what you are, which is what the media looks like, into who you are. And that's your true north. Your true north is the essence of what turns you on. Before we started, you're talking about your 5 daughters. That's amazing. I can't imagine raising 5 daughters. And by the way, I think you said you have a younger one, 7, but sometime they'll all be moved on. It'll be a different stage of life, but you cherish that. You have that. And if you don't, then you're really missing out on something in life. And by the way, you don't go back and when you get to be 55 and say, I'm going to take care of my daughters. They'll all be married and have their own lives. They'll still be there for you, but if you weren't there for when you're younger. So I think that's so key to how you think about leadership, because today we now have a new idea in my new book. The leader is coach, and it's an acronym. The first C is care. If people don't know you care about them, they aren't going to follow you. And then you have to organize them around a common, you have to give them the right spot on the field. It's again, the athletic model, but you can't put people in the wrong position. I'm a soccer nut, but you don't want to take your best scorer and put them back on defense. Or my son played, college soccer, and he was a great left defender, but he wouldn't have made a great striker. So you got to figure out how to organize them, and you got to line them around mission and values. And then you have to challenge people. It's okay to challenge people. Mike Krzyzewski, the basketball coach at Duke, was one of the most challenging people ever. I had one of his players in my classroom. He said there wasn't a day when Coach K wasn't in my face yelling at me to do better. But I'm not saying yell at people, but I think you can challenge them. And then finally, you got to help them. You got to work them. Let me show you how to do this, or I can help you. Look, I can't solve this technical problem at Medtronic, this quality problem we're having. But we're going to bring in some metallurgists we think can help solve this problem, or we're going to bring in some specialists who we know can help. So I think we're shifting from the old command and control, the Jack Welch era now, to this new era of discovering your true north, knowing who you are, and then putting it into practice, but not trying to dominate people, not trying to exert power of them, but be a coach that helps them reach their full potential. And isn't that what you want in a leader? I think it is.
Mm-hmm. What if someone is unsure of what their true north? Let's say they have a pretty good job, supports their family, they're doing well, maybe they're VP of something, and it's going well. Good company, they're not blown away, but they're good, right? But they're like, true north. Oh, I'm not sure. What are some ways for that person to get more clarity on their true north?
Well, the first thing you have to do is go back and process your life story. What were the most important events? What happened to you when you were a boy or a girl? What are the events that were really significant? And then you go from there and understanding who are the influencers, who are the parents, coaches, who really influence you, and what stands out about their influence on you on a positive basis. But then this is what people don't want to do. You had some difficult times. Okay, a parent died, parents got divorced, you got fired from a job, you had a boyfriend or a girlfriend and they dumped you, or you got rejected for whatever reason, maybe you weren't in their social class, that really stung. And you go back and process that and say, what'd you learn about yourself? And you strip all the pretense away. And this is who I am. That's the essence. And then from there, that'll tell you where you're true. That leads you to your true north of knowing who you are and who you want to be in the world. And then I ask the next question. So let's not talk about, and what do you think people are going to say about, I know it seems like a long way off, but what would you like them to say about you at your funeral? That you made millions of dollars, that you were CEO? Is that what they're going to say? They're not going to say that. We're going to talk about what kind of person did you help people out? I remember he helped me. I remember one of my senior executives, so we had total interactions. We sometimes had big arguments. He only tells the story that his son had left the family, and he calls me up one day and said, I'm in the hospital. I can't come into work today. I'm with my son who's just showed up from nowhere, and he's got very advanced skin cancer. And I went over, or excuse me, stomach cancer. So I went over to see him. He still remembers the fact that I just got in my car and drove over to this hospital. I didn't know. I was kind of scared. I didn't know what to say to his son. But the fact that I cared enough to go there for him, that's meant a lot more to him than anything we did at work. So I'm not bragging about myself, Ryan. I'm just saying that's what good leaders do. And people have done that for me. When my fiance died suddenly, my crucible, my mother died, and then my second fiance died 3 weeks the day before the wedding. And I remember I came back I was working for the Secretary of the Navy. He put my arm around me and he said, Bill, so sorry you had to experience the pains of life early. I still remember that hand on my shoulder, like, it's going to be okay. We're here for you. And he was a guy in his upper 50s then, and I was a kid, in my 25, 26 years old. So I'm sorry you had to learn about the pain of life so young, but it meant a lot to me, the fact he was there,
People, the way people show up for you, especially when times are tough, you remember it. I mean, this has been a while ago for you, and you're still remembering that feeling of the hand on your shoulder and what he said to you.
Yeah.
I think as leaders, it's important for us to think about that not that we want bad things to happen to people in our charge, but it's inevitable. It's life, and to be prepared to show up for people during those moments. So I think especially when someone dies or something happens, you get scared. I don't know what to say. I don't want to say the wrong thing. So you just do nothing, right? I've been this person for sure. Oh, I don't know. And then I just, right? When that's not the right way to respond. Is like, let's think about this now. Let's prepare ourselves to be good leaders for those moments, because that's what they'll remember.
You're right. I was just thinking about an incident at Medtronic where we had an employee. I think I'd met her once, young employee. She'd gone out camping or mountain hiking and up on a high cliff, and somehow in the middle of the night, she walked off the cliff and died. And our head of human resources said, Bill, would you call her mother? No, look, I didn't know her mother. I didn't know. She doesn't know me from Adam. And, I'm calling up her mother about her deceased daughter. How is this? But the mother really appreciated it. Went, yeah, if I screwed up my courage like you did, and said, okay, I'll call her. And she was so grateful. Can you imagine the head of my daughter's company thought enough to call me about that, and say how sorry he was, So you can't bring your daughter back, and I make it a policy when people lose their jobs to call them up and say, hey, can we just talk? Maybe this door closed, and maybe there is a reason why this wasn't the right place for you. And maybe your ex-boss, maybe it was unfair, maybe it was political. But what door is over there to open that you can now see? And it may take you a while to find that open door, but maybe you walk through that door and you may be a lot happier. And so that's a crucible for a lot of people. But,
to do things like this, though, I think that what I hear a lot from senior level leaders is when I'm really pushing them on being reflective and journaling and writing and being a thoughtful person. They say, dude, you don't understand my schedule. Like, I'm back to back to back to back to back. I don't have time for this stuff. That's soft stuff. And I vehemently disagree. I think it's essential stuff. It's not soft. But as a CEO, it sounds like you were doing all of this. How did you organize and really plan your days in order to work on what I think are the necessities of leadership, and not just focused on, okay, what's the numbers, where's the next meeting, what's going on? You know what I mean? Like, I'm curious of how you manage that.
You have to take control of your schedule, and you almost have to be brutal about it. But if you get yourself, a lot of people have had this during COVID, Ryan. They get locked into one Zoom call after another. Oh, it's 8:59. I got to go to my 9 o'clock. Now it's 9:59. I got to go to my 10 o'clock. They get so locked into that they, they let the schedule control them. First of all, why do these meetings need to be an hour? Why not half an hour? The most valuable meetings I had in Medtronic is I would put on the schedule, 3 o'clock, I'm just going to wander around the offices. And I just say, hey, Ryan, what you up to? I learned more from that. Or just, I didn't have luncheon plans, so I get down and hang out in the cafeteria. I was a little self-conscious. I'm a little shy, but sit down with a group of factory workers and say, how's the quality? Oh, Mr. George, we can't produce quality because our equipment's not working. Really? Tell me more about that. Just learning. You have to be a constant learner in business. And if you're not constantly learning, if you think you know it all, you're in deep, deep trouble. And so I believe, look, you keep learning throughout your lifetime. I've learned more in the years I've been, at Harvard than just because I have a chance to meet so many executives like yourself across such a wide swath. I've learned so much about people and about business, just interacting with people. So I love that. But we did a CEO survey of what CEOs do all the time. They're spending 75, 80% of their time in meetings. And, I just say it's too much, guys. I always challenge them. What are you doing to get out with your people? Oh, I don't have time. And I say, you have to, exactly what you said, Ryan, you have to have an introspective practice. I happen to be a meditator. I meditate every day. It might be mindful practice. It might be going for a jog. You might go for a walk. You might keep a journal, sit in a quiet place, and just reflect on, how did I show up today? Was I fulfilled? Was I a good leader? How did I treat people? And stop worrying about, oh, I didn't get, Ryan, I had 10 things to get done today. I didn't get number 7 and 8 done. There'll always be a task. There'll always be another meeting, but are you really showing up? Are you being introspective? So your advice to people, keep giving them that, because being introspective, I remember I walked by a table once and Jack Welch was sitting there with Larry Bossett. He was at Allied Signal, and he said, oh, introspection's for sissies. Boy, they get that wrong.
What?
You need to be. That's what they said. Yeah.
Wow.
And it surprises you, I can tell. But you need to be introspective. You need to think about, Dov Seidman calls it the pause principle. Take time out. I say, take 20 minutes a day, and don't tell me you don't have time. You don't have time not to do these things.
Right. You're speaking my language. You have to be a constant learner in business. The MBWA style that Tom Peters has talked about on the show and obviously written about, I find super helpful. What about now as the landscape is changing and it's a much more hybrid model? There are some that is completely remote and others where they're maybe going in the office some of the time. What advice in this new world where it seems like it's going to be this way do you give to leaders where they're not necessarily with their people every day?
Every CEO, every leader I know is worried about this a lot. Yeah. And I found even in the classroom at Harvard, we were at the point where some people will only teach remote. There is a certain benefit in being together. And I think when we're not together, we lose things like mentoring and coaching. We lose that quick interaction. We're walking down the hall and somebody says, well, I got to tell you what I'm working on, or they're excited about something. We lose a lot of that interaction. It's too formal. So I think the world is going to be a hybrid world. It's going to be a flexible world. I don't think it's going to be all remote or all in person. And by the way, any global company, by definition, a lot of it's got to be done remote, because you can't ask people to get in an airplane. That's the biggest waste of time at all, of sitting on an airplane from China to the United States. So you got to learn how to do that. But on the other hand, I think we also need to look for opportunities to get together, because what happens when we're together, we get creative, we get innovative, and our energy plays off of each other. And I think it does that more than it does on an online meeting. You can do the online meetings for kind of fact-based things, but for the human interactions, I think we still need that, and we still need mentors. Everyone should be a mentor. I have mentees. Well, my co-author on my new book, Emerging Leader Edition, is 37 years old. I've learned more from Zach Clayton about how, social media, technology, how do people use it, how do millennials think, And that's why we wrote a book together, because I think that interplay is critical.
Yeah, it's been so cool over the past year as people, while some are having big events, but most are having at minimum smaller leadership offsites. And I got to participate in a number of those. And when you leave those 2 or 3 days, it's like you're on this high because you've connected, and maybe you appreciate it even more because you didn't have it for a little bit. And to me, I don't see that ever going away. I think it's in our historical DNA that we have to be together. Maybe not every day, but we do have to spend time together in order to connect, to get things done, especially creative work. I find, even though I, again, like you, similar on the introversion, extroversion scale, those days, though, really light me up, especially when it comes to trying to build some sort of creative pursuit. We got to be together.
Bingo. You got it 100% correct. So we just need to think about those, but also we need more flexibility. Look, if my daughter-in-law needs, or my son needs to be a 3:30 parent-teacher conference to talk about how our granddaughter is doing, they need to be there, and they don't want to be in a work environment. So, well, they can't be there until after 6 when they get off work. This is nonsense. So flexibility. Everyone should be able to control their own schedule and act as a professional. Even people that, I realize start a production line is a little bit different deal, but I think anyone who has that should be able to control their own schedule and based on the job to be done, and be professional.
You write about leadership crucibles, and crucibles shape your leadership. Can you tease that out a little bit more for me about what it means to have your leadership crucibles?
Well, let me speak personally. My father, I'm an only child of older parents. My father he thought he was a failure at trying to lead. He wanted me to become the leader he never became. And so he's talking to me, 9, 10, 11 years old. Son, you could be head of a major company. Even named the companies, like he mentioned Coca-Cola, Procter & Gamble, new little computer company on the East Coast called IBM. Of course, I didn't know these companies, but so I joined lots of organizations. I never was elected leader of anything in high school and junior high and high school. So finally, my senior year, I put my hat in the ring to be president of senior class. The votes came in. I ran against one other person. I knew I was a lot better leader than he was. I lost by a margin of 2-1 because I hadn't learned the essence. Leadership is about relationships. It's not about, I'm the best organized, I'm the smartest. It's about relationship. So then, a glutton for punishment, I go off to Georgia Tech, 800 miles away, where I didn't know anyone, ran for office 6 more times, lost all 6. So I'm over. Brian, the best thing that ever happened to me, and this is a crucible for me, because I think I'm going to be a leader. Now I'm 0 for 7, and I'm really discouraged. Some of the seniors took me aside and said, Bill, no one's ever going to work with you, much less be led by you, because you're moving so fast to get ahead, you don't take time for other people. And that was like a blow to the solar plexus. You know why? Because they're right. And I didn't. And it was like I was building a resume instead of a life. So I had a lot to learn. I put together I went back, talked to a lot of people who rejected me, and put together my own self-help development program. And I did get a chance junior and senior year to lead a lot of organizations in graduate school. So that was a real crucible for me, because I really had to learn about myself, and I had to look myself in the mirror. It's easy to say, I lost my job, I can blame my ex-boss. You got to look yourself in the mirror and say, what did I do? Because people that lose their spouses and get a divorce, it takes 2 to tango. What was my role in that? So I think we really have to look at that, at ourselves. And that's what crucibles do. They force us, all the pretense is stripped away. We have to look in the window. My son was a rising star with Novartis, and he lost his job, got squeezed out in a political move. He was bitter for a while, but he looked himself. He's so much happier now, and he's much better father to his daughters, and just leading a much more fulfilled life. So God bless him.
How were you able to develop such accountability and ownership early in your life? Some of it stems from a high level of awareness, and the opposite is a low level of awareness, where people point fingers. It's somebody else's fault when really you need to hold up the mirror. Yeah. But it's kind of hard, because the people who lack self-awareness, they're not going to be good at this, so they don't realize it's a problem. But you developed this at a much younger age than I know I did. How were you able to do that?
I don't know. That may be in my DNA. I always felt a deep sense of responsibility if someone asked me to do something, not to let them down and to
Yeah.
deliver on time, particularly in a volunteer context. Because, you know, it's one thing to say I beat the deadline that school puts on me to turn in a paper or something like that. I don't mean that. But I think if in any kind of organization, if people ask you to do things, I always felt a responsibility to do the best I could and try to deliver on that. And I carry that almost like a burden. And I've carried it through lots of organizations. Back to the, you can laugh and think it's a silly analogy, but back to those 12-year-old boys I was coaching in youth soccer, I felt an obligation to be there at 6 o'clock when we started practice, you know, and have
Hmm.
my shorts on, not my work suit. And but I felt that obligation not to ever let people down. And I've really worked hard at that throughout my life. If somebody wants me to mentor them and they call and they got a problem, I'm taking the call. I can't say, gee, I'm too busy. Or I may have to maybe an hour later, but you know, I'm not, I always can't be instant. But I feel that I do feel that, and I think everyone, honestly, in today's world, we just talk about empowerment. People don't understand it. Empowerment assumes a certain level of responsibility. So if I empower you to take this task on, then you need to feel responsible, and it's closed loop accountability. Come back and tell us how you're doing. So I do feel that pretty strongly, that that's the essence of relationships, not to let people down. And if you can't get it done, you got to call them up and just be honest with them.
How did your dad's massive expectations for you that you could be running these giant companies, how did that impact you at a young age? I'm thinking of myself as a dad, and you know,
Yeah.
you're always questioning yourself of like, what am I doing? Am I doing it wrong? How did those expectations impact you?
Well, not all positively. I pushed them away. And fortunately, my mother was the opposite. She didn't care if I brought home A's or C's. It was about I was a good person and I had good relationship with people. And so I was much closer to my mother than my father. In fact, when she died, it was a huge loss in my life when I was 24 years old. But I think his expectations subliminally affected me. And that affected me later in life when frankly, I was he wanted me to be CEO of a major company, not just a mid-sized company. So I was at Honeywell. I'd been president of Honeywell Europe. I got two-step promotion. I'm an executive vice president. I'm one of two leading candidates to be the next CEO. Decision maybe 3 years off. But, you know, I was losing sight. We didn't use the word true north in those days. I'm losing sight of who I am. And I'm doing a series of turnarounds. One day I'm driving home. Now, by the way, I should say I met my wife Penny at a dinner party a few months after my fiance died. We have our 53rd wedding anniversary coming up. We have two wonderful sons, lots of friends. But I'm driving home and I look at myself in the mirror. And by the way, supposedly on the way to the top, and what I saw in the mirror was a miserable person, because I was losing sight of my true north. We didn't use that phrase, but I was losing sight of who I was. I was wearing cufflinks, which I don't wear. I never wear cufflinks, and trying to be the man. And that wasn't who I was. I was trying to meet somebody else's expectation. And I think, Ryan, one of the biggest problems that leaders have is when instead of being who they are, they're meeting someone else's expectations for them. And that's the issue I had with my father. So here subliminally, I'm trying to be CEO of Honeywell. I went home and told my wife why I was feeling miserable, because I wasn't happy with my work. The only purpose of the company was making money, and I knew how to do it, but that didn't resonate with that. And so my wife said, "Bill, I've been trying to tell you that for a year. You just wouldn't listen." So she knew she was right. The next day, I went to my men's group, which, by the way, has been meeting for 45 years. We meet every Wednesday morning, sometimes remotely now. And they said, "Well, why'd you turn Medtronic down for a job?" And you'll see the ego coming out here, right? Well, it's kind of a mid-sized company. I wanted to run a big company. So I went to Medtronic and I took on a job a third of the size of business I was running at Honeywell. I felt I was coming home, because here's a group of people where we share a common set of values. We had a common purpose of restoring people to full life and health. And it was the best 13 years of my life, because I realized this is where I should be. And we built up, now it's a pretty good sized company. It's 30 billion in sales, 150 billion in market cap. So it's no small company, but I didn't see that at the time. At the time, I felt like this is where I should be, but I had to face myself in that crucible and face my own reality. Was I trying to build a resume? Was I reaching for the brass ring, and wanting the title of CEO? Same thing I was doing for running for the president senior class. Oh, I'll be okay if I get the title. You'll respect me more. No, not at all. And so I had to back away from that goal and move on to a place where I could be who I am.
Thank you for sharing the personal story, especially about your mom and your dad. Do you remember the interview process to become CEO at Medtronic?
I do.
What was it?
The key interview is I was so busy at Honeywell, I could hardly have interviews. And I met the founder of Medtronic, who came all the way from Hawaii to meet me in a Marriott courtyard in Phoenix, Arizona, where I had one of my divisions. And this is Earl Bakken. He invented the pacemaker. He never asked me anything about myself. He wanted to tell me about the mission of Medtronic. And he was watching my eyes and my facial and body reaction. Could I relate to the mission of Medtronic of restoring people to full life and health and the values the company stood for, of always putting the patient's interest first and integrity? And so it was really interesting. I had some board members interviewed me, but it was all about character. And you can read the resume. You don't have to ask people, why did you do this? What did you do that? Where were you at age 35? I mean, yeah, you can read a lot of paper. What's important is they were interviewing me for character. Did I have the right character and quality to lead their organization? And so I really appreciated that. And so when I went there, I felt like I could take those same things and take it in the interviews I did, but also in building the team.
I'm just curious about those processes because they're kind of secretive in a way for those who have never done it. And the majority of humans have not been the CEO of Medtronic or a company like that. Right. And it's just interesting that your previous work got you in the door, right? Your results, your team building, all that got you in the door. And the final step, though, probably most important was, what type of guy is Bill? What kind of guy is he, right? Like, what's he like? What's he really like?
So let me give you an example. One of the first big mistakes I made at Medtronic, there's a probability I was going to become CEO in 2 years. So I reorganized the whole company around a global organization, similar to what we'd had at Honeywell. And we needed a lot of work. We had a lot of work to do. We promoted the first person to be president of Honeywell Europe, similar to the job I had at Honeywell. And this is a great guy in his 50s, a lot older than I was, knew the business extremely well, Dutchman, really good. And some people had some reservation about it being too rough, too aggressive, too, not pleasant to work for. But I said, no, it's the kind of guy we need. So 6 months after I appoint him, our general counsel comes in my office and said, Bill, can I close the door? Because I had an open door policy. And I'd like to call up our chief auditor. And what they showed me is this guy had been running a bribery fund on behalf of Italian doctors. So every time an invoice was cut, 10% of it went into this bribery fund. And, so the easy thing to do is to call up John and say, hey, come on over from Belgium. On Monday morning, I'll meet with you, and to terminate him, showing him his compliance statement. That was easy. It was hard. I had to look myself in the face and say, Bill, why'd you hire him? And then I had to go back and tell the members of the executive committee and the board of directors. Remember, I'm the new kid on the block. I've been there a little over a year. I made a mistake. I made a big mistake. I didn't check out his values. His values didn't change, Ryan. It was I did not take time to really assess that. I appointed him for his resume, for his outward qualities. I didn't know the real person inside. So I can't criticize him for changing. This is who he was all along. And I should never have made that promotion. So I learned a lot from that early mistake. And by sharing that with people, and by the way, this potential for Uncorrupt Practices Act violation, it wasn't, but all this went, we had to go to the SEC, press releases. So it was ugly, but it was a learning experience.
I was going to ask, the key learning from that moment had to be, I would imagine you shifted your interview process and getting to know them. And you write about in chapter 5, which is about living your values. Did you shift more towards talking about character and their values and then alignment when you were making leadership hires then?
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Because that's what it all mattered. And integrity is everything. Look, you may have a different set of values and you may value things differently, but the one value we have to share is integrity. Because if you don't tell me the truth, we can't work together. If I don't tell you the truth, you don't want to work with me. And I remember coaching one of my subordinates saying, uh, telling the truth is not the absence of lying. It's let's have the whole picture. Because if we have a real problem, tell me the whole problem and don't put a band-aid over and say it's all fixed when it's not. We can get the best experts in the country, either inside our company or outside, to solve this problem. But I've got to know, I'm not clairvoyant. I have to know the truth. And so I think we share on truth and integrity. And I think those things are inviolable, have to be.
Mm-hmm. What does it mean to lead an integrated life?
Well, you've been talking about, you're doing it. An integrated life. Can I be the same person at work, at home, with my kids, coaching on that soccer field, working in the community, and in my personal life? And, that means when I was 34 years old, I was running 4 different lives, to tell you the truth, the 2 little kids at home and trying to be in the community. And, I had a faith-based personal life. And then I was trying to be the man at work at building a microwave business. I had to knock all that down and say, look, I'm going to be the same person everywhere I go. And if you can't accept me for that, fine. I'm not a fancy person. I'm just down to earth, and I can't emulate fancy people. Why should I try? But I think if you have integral, comes from the word integrity, and that's your core. The French word core is your heart. And you lead from your heart. You lead from who you are, not from your head. See, we've gone from using our hands to our heads the last 40 years, not our hearts. And so do you lead with your heart? And that means passion, compassion. Do you have compassion for the people you're serving? Do you have empathy for people you work with? Do you have courage to make a bold decision to say, I made a mistake, or we started this venture, it didn't work out, we're shutting it down? Do you have that kind of courage? And I think those qualities are learned qualities. They're not something you're born with. And so, but to have an integrated life, you've got to think about how do you integrate all aspects of your life. It's never going to be perfect, but you've got to make sure you're really working at it and doing the very best you can.
What are some of the key learnings that you've picked up over the years teaching at Harvard? You're surrounded by highly thoughtful and intelligent people who have accomplished big things, and you're tasked with standing up in front of them and teaching. And I know some of the styles are different. They're case study and discussion based versus lectures, depending on the course. But what are some of the key things you've picked up over the years while teaching at such a prestigious school?
Well, first thing is I tell people I'm not an academic, okay? And what I call research on leadership is talking to people like you, learning from other people. And when I was there, I spent about 2.5 to 3 hours a day with students in my office instead of being out with the other faculty. Boy, I learned more from that about the lives. Now, most of these people are in the millennial generation. They're now in their late 30s. And we stay in touch. They reach out to me. I say, look, I'm not going to chase you, but anytime you need help or information, just come back to me. And so I learned a lot about people. The biggest thing I learned on a negative side is people were chasing external expectations. Did you go to work for Goldman Sachs? Did you go to work for McKinsey? Did you go work for a prestigious organization? How much money you make when you come out of school? Those are all the wrong questions to ask. Are you working someplace you feel fulfilled? Do you have people you work with that are helping you grow, helping you learn? Are you part of a learning organization, or are you part of a know-it-alls? And I remember I was in one of those organizations. Well, I looked at a couple of those organizations, never went to work there because I felt like, this bunch of arrogant, egotistical people. But I've learned so much from my colleagues at Harvard how to think about authenticity, how to think about leadership. The greatest teacher I had, mentor, Nitin our former dean, who just stepped down and finished his 10 years and stepped aside a year ago. He taught me so much about leadership and how to work in this world. So it was a great interplay. Warren Bennis was there earlier before he passed away, and a great mentor to help me think about all these aspects of leadership. So I guess in my book, The Emerging Leader Edition, True North, Brian, I can't say each of these ideas are original. All I do is I'm like a sponge. I pick up all the ideas and try to integrate them into whole how you should think about your leadership. So they aren't going to get any prizes academically in academia, but it's going to help leaders figure out how can, we all have to find our own path through life and help them go on that path. And the path, when I was coming out of school, I used to think it was like a rocket ship to the moon. You go straight up to, and you wind up in the CEO office. It's not like that. It's more like I'm a mountain climber, more like mountains that, that you hit one peak and then you get to the next peak, you got to go down in the valley and come back up. And life is more like that. You're going to hit the valleys where things don't go your way. And that's certainly been true for me. So, but recognizing that, I think I can help other people. So at Harvard, I've learned a tremendous amount about leadership is changing. And so today's leaders are very different than they were when I was a CEO. It's a much tougher job, but they're very different. And they are authentic, they are real, and they're doing their best to create those kind of organizations. And the pressures on leaders are far greater because now, because we've lost trust in government and gridlock and politics and most businesses, but I don't really meet any business either far left or far right. They all kind of want to come together and build great organizations. But what now people are looking to business to solve larger problems,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How are you going about solving those problems? But that gets to your purpose. That's okay.
Another form of leadership, 53 years of marriage. Have to ask, man, what are the keys to sustaining an awesome marriage over more than 5 decades?
Communicate all the time. And because here's what happens, you're married at a young age, but your careers may diverge, your interests may diverge, and the only way to keep those together is to communicate. My wife and I are constantly talking about these things because, I traveled a lot in business. You got to constantly be there. And there's never a night when I didn't call her and I was away. But always communicate and talk about what's really important to you, what's important to me, and how do we work this out. And you can get from logistic problem to having a problem with our son, or it can be, a higher issue. What do we want for ourselves looking over the next 2-3 years? But I think it's that two people have to continue to grow together. So it's like you grow like an intersecting vines, and you grow together, but you're intersecting, but you're sometimes standing independent. So that's that communication. And she has to communicate her expectations. I have to communicate mine. And I think that's what keeps it going. And so that's, to me, how is it for you? I bet it's similar for you. That
Well, I think a lot of life's problems stem from poor communication. I think vivid clarity is necessary in work life and in home life. And when I think about some of the issues that arise, it's usually because of that, or maybe why they linger is because of that. And once then it's addressed and you talk it through, you could, and I think hopefully you have some compassion and empathy and understanding of what it's like to be in the other person's shoes. Oh, okay.
Exactly.
And that happens all the time. And we're people, we're human beings. I mean, that's part of how it goes. So I think that's a big part. I was also going to ask you about being a dad. Again, you raise kids who've done really well. I'm sure there are bumps in the road like there is for everybody, but what is your overall philosophy towards being a great dad?
Being there for my sons. I try to treat them as equals, even when they were teenagers, just being there for them. And, it's hard because if a child, if a son, daughter has a problem, they want you to be there now. If you're not there, they'll turn to a friend because they have problems. And coming in 3 days later doesn't do any good. But I think just try to be there and listen to them and understand where they're coming from, what their needs and desires are, how they see themselves. And it's okay. I now have a teenage grandson who's nicest young man in the world, but now he's starting to push back against his father and against me. It's okay. That's the developmental stage. I wouldn't be surprised your daughters who are 15 years old, 13 years old. That's part of the developmental stage. You're defining yourself in the world and you differentiate yourself from your parents. You learn from your parents, but then you decide, who do you want? Who do you want to be in the world? And so I think as a parent, we just have to go through that process and let people grow in that way. By the way, the same is true as a leader in business. Right. You have to let people grow in the way they want to grow. So it's not that much different in a sense. and you have to communicate all the time with your daughter. Sometimes, teenagers don't want to communicate as much, and you have to kind of draw them into the communication.
I think you got to meet them where they're at. All of a sudden you show up on TikTok looking like an idiot trying to dance one day. Like that's the type of stuff that you try to do to try to meet them where they're at. So, my dad always just told me, and he still says this, and he still lives this for me, is, your presence is required. Not your presence like Christmas giving presents, but your presence, presence. And I just think about that all the time. Like whether it's swimming in the pool, like I'm going to actually get in the pool, or it's in the backyard playing I'm going to learn lacrosse, volleyball, soccer, all the sports that I never played.
Right.
I played football, right? But I'm going to learn all these sports. I think that's part of your presence is required. And to me, I think that's critical and really important. Bill, this is amazing, man. The book, True North, Leading Authentically in Today's Workplace, Emerging Leader Edition. And I like the update and the addition, and you adding Zach Clayton, which I know you wanted to give him huge props for making this next book great. But I highly encourage people to check this book out because it's a good combination of stories as well as application. And I think that's hard to do, but it makes it both entertaining and actionable, and that's necessary because you actually want to do stuff. We don't just want to learn in theory, we want to do it, and that's obviously what you've done in your career and what you've done in this book too.
Well, thank you, Ryan. It's a privilege to be with you. You asked great questions. I really appreciate this kind of just having a conversation and really talking about what's important in life. And I think it really does come to that. That's what we're talking about, is what's important in life. So thank you so much for letting me share some of my thoughts, at least, and hearing some of yours.
Sure. Your kind words mean a lot to me. I've looked up to you for a very long time. You've been a mentor of mine for years, and you didn't even know it. So it's really neat for me when you get to meet your heroes and they exceed your expectations. It makes me really love what I get to do every day, and I'm super grateful for this conversation, man. So I would love to continue our dialogue as we both progress, man.
Let's do it. I'm available anytime, and thank you. Good. This is great. Thank you.